Hey, welcome everybody. Thank you for attending. As Jennifer said, my name is Gene Cobb. I'm with the IBM I development team on the DB2 and DB2 Web Query team in Rochester, Minnesota. And what I'm going to be taking you through today in this three-part webinar is an overview and kind of an explanation of all of the new things that we've recently added to the product, to the DB2 Web Query product. So I've been doing this for quite a while. Web Query came out in 2007, and I've been kind of evangelizing and providing education ever since then. And so I go to Common and many user groups and roadshows and that kind of thing, and I'm always quite astonished, even today, when I talk to people and they still don't know what Web Query is. They may have heard of it, and obviously all of you on the webinar today have heard of it at least. But there are still quite a few of our customers that really don't understand what it is and how it can benefit their shop. So I always like to provide a little overview. And we use this term business intelligence, or BI, a lot today. And it's a very important thing in terms of what our executives and CTOs and CFOs and CIOs, they always rate business intelligence as one of the top priorities for their shops. And basically what it means is, taking all of that data, those hundreds and millions of rows of data that you have in your transactional databases and all of those invoices and orders that you have in your databases, and making some sense of it so that you can make good business decisions going forward. And in the past, we've kind of referred to this as just regular querying and reporting. And we had something that accomplished that in the early days of the AS400, and that was Query 400. So I bet a lot of you, if not all of you, know what Query 400 is and have used it. It's been a very, very popular tool. In fact, I think the last numbers that I read were over 65,000 licenses of Query 400 are out there. And so it's been very popular. It's very easy to use, very intuitive, but it does have many limitations. And one of the problems with Query 400 is its tendency to have shops really proliferate Query 400 reports. You've got many redundant reports. You might have created a Query 400 report on the fly to answer a question and forgot to delete it. And over time, you really build up a lot of these. In fact, I was working with a client earlier this year that had about 70,000 Query 400 reports. So maintenance of those objects becomes a nightmare. And chances are, if you've got 75,000 Query 400 objects, you're not really using all of them. But you might be scared to get rid of them, not knowing if it's being used somewhere else. And there's other problems with Query 400s. It really, you depend on report authors, and those report authors may write bad or runaway queries that really tax the system and take the resources away from other jobs. So that's a problem. You can't really control, who can and can't write queries in an easy manner. And in addition, Query 400 cannot use our latest and greatest query technology. And by that, I'm referring to our SQL query engine that came out in V5R2 and was built specifically for SQL access. And we built a lot of good performance improvements into SQE over the years and a lot of good tooling to support that. Query 400 does not use that query engine. It still uses the classic query engine. So you're not getting that good performance. You're not, you don't have the ability to use the tools like the plan cache and things like Visual Explain to break down exactly what happened in a particular query. And also, there's, because there's this perception that the IBM I doesn't have a modern query and reporting tool, a lot of people in your shop may be encouraging you to move the data off of the I, and maybe to a SQL Server where they say, hey, we can, we've got tools on SQL Server that allow us to build charts and dashboards and that kind of thing. Or, hey, maybe extract all of that data off of DB2I into a spreadsheet, and then I can go and make a nice chart over it because Query 400 can't do that. So there's this lack of modern interfaces with Query 400. And so that is kind of why, all of those reasons are why we came out with DB2 Web Query, to provide a modern graphical tool that is, allows you to use the new query engine and allows you to take advantage of all these new things, and doesn't require you to create redundant reports using technologies like OLAP and highly parameterized reporting, where a single report written in DB2 Web Query can replace perhaps dozens, if not hundreds, of Query 400 reports. So that's how we position DB2 Web Query for IBM I. It's a low-cost analytics solution, and it's meant to be a strategic replacement for Query 400. It allows you to keep all of your data on the DB2 for I database, and all of the components for DB2 Web Query run natively on the I, so we don't require any external servers to do any of the work. We have a metadata layer, which is very important. I don't have a lot of time to talk about the virtues of metadata, but just think of it as a way to centralize, simplify, and abstract your database so that you can define certain rules in one central place. So things like joins and define fields and compute fields can all be centralized, so there's one version of the truth, and you don't have to, as a report developer, redefine a particular field over and over again. And DB2 Web Query, unlike Query 400, generates SQL on the back end for database access. So this is very, very important because it means you can leverage that new SQE, that SQL query engine that I was talking about earlier. And you can get tremendous performance benefits by doing that. And as I mentioned, by taking advantage of things like OLAP and highly parameterized reporting and active reports in DB2 Web Query, a single report can replace many, many Query 400 reports. So as I mentioned, Web Query has been out since 2007, and I just like to throw this chart up there to let folks know that we continue to keep the drumbeat going, that we try to make a splash just about every year on enhancements to DB2 Web Query. So 2007 we came out with it. We added some significant enhancements in 2008, 2009 and 10. We added new versions, and in 2012, earlier this year, in June, we announced and made available version 2, release 1 of DB2 Web Query. Now you may notice that we don't follow the same release cycle as the operating system. That's by intent. We have our own version and release, nor do we follow the technology refreshes. So in case you were wondering, does DB2 Web Query, is V2R1 part of the TR5? It is not. So any timing, if the timing is the same, it's purely coincidental there. So we do have our own release cycle. And that gives us the freedom to come out with new versions and releases in a timely manner. Okay, so let's get to the first business at hand, and that you're probably the most interested in for this part of the webinar, and that is what's new with DB2 Web Query. What enhancements are provided in version 2.1. The first thing I want to talk about is our repackaging of the product. And the whole idea here, a main emphasis of version 2 release 1 is simplification. What we wanted to do was greatly simplify many of the components of DB2 Web Query, and we're starting at the top here. We've heard a lot of feedback from customers and partners that the ordering and packaging of DB2 Web Query was rather complex in the previous versions. So what we decided to do was greatly simplify that by providing only 2 editions of DB2 Web Query. So we have an Express edition, which is kind of a starter kit, if you will, and we've also got a standard edition. So in Express edition, you get the authoring tools and metadata management. Built into this edition are also OLAP, our Excel plugin, and active reports. And you also have the ability to add additional users and develop both named users and developer workbench users as you see fit. Now, if you need more capability than that, then we have the standard edition, and that includes everything in Express edition and a lot more goodies. So virtually unlimited runtime user support. So this means that you can essentially put people in a group profile, and you can license that group profile. And anyone in that group profile now has access to run DB2 Web Query reports. So that's runtime only. We've got some nice report distribution functions. In previous versions, we referred to this as Report Broker, and this was a scheduling and distribution system where you could say, okay, I want this report to run at midnight, and I want to distribute it to these specific email addresses. That report distribution component has been built into the standard edition. We've also got our APIs and application extensions, which allow you to integrate content into your own applications. We provided the SQL Server adapter, so in the event you also have business data on SQL Server, you can write a single DB2 Web Query report and bring in data from both DB2 for I databases and SQL Server. And so in addition to that, if you have a need for additional users, you can do that as well with the standard edition. So you can add additional authorized or named users, just as you could with the Express. You can also add developer workbench users, and you can add additional runtime groups as well. Another add-on that you can order that's not part of standard, but you can order it on top of standard is our J.D. Edwards application adapter. If you need the ability to query J.D. Edwards databases and you want to simplify the conversion of the J.D. Edwards specific logic to something more meaningful, that's what our application adapter does for J.D. Edwards. So here's kind of a side-by-side comparison of where we came from in version 1.1x to the new version 2.1. So you can kind of see it laid out there. We've got the base version 1.1.2 and these additional options. And now we've just got the two editions with Express and Standard. Now, a question that often comes up is, what is the upgrade path to either Express or Standard Edition? So if I have version 1, release 1, V1 R1 M1, or V1 R1 M2, how do I upgrade into the new product? And the way we did that is, if you had the base product in V1 R1 V1 R1MX, then what we do is we upgrade you into the Express Edition. The nice thing about that is that once you do that, the OLAP component, the active report component, and the spreadsheet, which were previously separate features and chargeable features, they're all packaged into Express. So you kind of get those things for free now if you didn't already have them. So that's a really nice thing. I do want to point out that you do need software maintenance for a no-charge upgrade into either Express or Standard. So that is a requirement. And as far as upgrading to Standard, if you had any of these options or the report broker product, so if you had runtime user enablement, which was option 4 in V1 R1 M2, or you had the SQL Server adapter or the J.D. Edwards adapter or the report broker product, having any one of those things will automatically upgrade you into the Standard Edition. So you get everything once you go into Standard. And again, you do need software maintenance to qualify for that upgrade. Another drastic difference in 1.1.2 to 2.1 was in 1.1.2 we had tier-based pricing. So it was based on your processor tier, P05, P10, and so on. The new pricing for 2.1 is based on core. So you can kind of see some of the pricing there. And in particular, the customers that are really going to benefit from this are the larger customers that have multiple cores. Because now what you can do is, previous to 2.1, if you purchased Web Query, it was tier-based, you were essentially paying for Web Query across all of the cores on your system. So now what this allows you to do, you can purchase it per core, is it allows you to do some sub-capacity pricing. So if you had a 2-core P20 before, you can save approximately $24K by licensing it down to a single core. So instead of licensing it to both cores, you can now say, I just want my Web Query work to run on a single core on the system. Similarly, in the example shown there, a 4-core P30, you can save even more, almost $44K, by licensing it down to just 2 cores instead of all 4 cores. So the way we enforce this sub-capacity workload is by using our workload capping support on the IBM I. And this first came out in the operating system V6 R1 M1. So at 6.1.1 and 7.1, you can license to a subset of cores in an LPAR or in a system. So what happens is these PTFs say, okay, you're licensed to a single core, so I'm going to restrict the workload to only work on a single core. Now, if you happen to be at V6R1M0, these workload capping PTFs are not available. So unfortunately, you have to license Web Query to each core in the LPAR, or you won't be able to start Web Query. So it's a good reason to upgrade to 6.1.1 or 7.1. Okay, so some more new things that are built into version 2.1 of DB2 Web Query is a new security model. And I'll quickly run through this. In DB2 Web Query, what you do as a developer is you create reports, charts, and dashboards in what we call a top-level folder. And in our new security model, what an administrator can do is they can take that top-level folder, let's say it's sales and marketing, and they can assign people into different roles. And you see them listed there in blue. So there's a run role, there's an analyst, there's a developer, there's a metadata administrator, there's a scheduler, and an overall folder administrator. So a web query administrator can say, okay, I want to put Jackie as an analyst, I want to make AJ a developer, I want to make Jen the administrator of the metadata. So there's more granularity and separation of duties within that folder. So now that really allows you to get really granular, and now you can say, okay, only these people can run, only these people can create new reports, and only these specific people can update the metadata. So that's something that a lot of our customers, particularly our larger ones with more stringent security requirements, have been asking for. So that's something that we delivered in 2.1. So here's an example of that. It's the screenshot here. So it's showing a list of all of the users on the system. So I'm going to select COBG in that group and import that user. And that will basically consume a license in Web Query when I do that. So I'm now a named user whenever I import COBG into DB2 Web Query. Once I'm in the list of available users for Web Query, what I can do is now, as administrator, is that I can assign COBG to any one of those roles. So I can say, okay, in the common top-level folder, I'm going to make COBG a report developer and click that little arrow icon in the middle. When I do that, now COBG is a member of that developer role, and that user profile can now create and edit reports in that top-level folder. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of how to administer that and how we provide that new granularity in version 2.1. Another thing that's new that's pretty exciting is a web-based synonym editor. Now, I talked a little bit about the metadata layer before, where it's this abstraction layer between the database, the tables, the files, and the actual DB2 Web Query reports. So you can build a lot of abstraction. You can define your joins and your filters and your define fields in the metadata layer. Prior to version 2.1, most of those types of capabilities could only be done in a PC tool called Developer Workbench. So you would have to go and buy Developer Workbench for around $1,000 a license, and you would install it on your PC, and that gave you a really nice synonym editor tool where you could do the kind of things like define join segments and OLAP dimensions and define fields, compute fields, and filters. In version 2.1, we do not require Developer Workbench anymore to do those kinds of activities. That can all be done through the web browser now. So that's a nice thing, because a lot of our customers didn't buy Developer Workbench, and they found that they weren't able to define the joins at the metadata layer and create define fields and so on. So now they'll be able to do that from the web browser. Probably one of the most significant enhancements in 2.1 was our consolidation of our various development tools. And this follows the theme of simplification. We really wanted to simplify things, both for our customers, because now they only had to learn one tool to use, and our support and development teams, because now they only have to focus and support a single development tool. We had separate teams for our Report Assistant, Graph Assistant, and Power Painter tools, so now we can consolidate those into a single programming team and be a lot more efficient. So in version 2.1, InfoAssist, this new tool that was first made available in version 1.1.2, in version 2.1, it becomes the only development tool. So this means we have essentially retired Report Assistant, Graph Assistant, and Power Painter. Those tools are no longer available. But all of the functions of those tools will be built into InfoAssist. So if you haven't had a chance to try InfoAssist yet, we'll have a little demo at the end of my session. I'll kind of show you how to quickly create a dashboard using InfoAssist. But it's a really nice WYSIWYG-like tool that allows you to create queries, reports, charts, dashboards, and compound documents. So you can do all of those things from a single tool. It also has some really nice features where you can start with maybe a report, and you might say, well, that's a nice report, but I really meant to create that as a graph. So instead of starting over, what you can do is, by the click of a button, you can transform that report into a chart. Or you can say, maybe I want to embed that existing chart or report into a dashboard or compound document. You can do that as well with a click of a button. It's a very nice and easy to use drag and drop interface. You can see over on the left there's a list of available fields. You simply drag them over into the interactive design view, and you can instantly see what that chart or report is going to look like. You can go to a variety of output formats: HTML, Adobe PDF, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint, our active reports, which Jackie will be demoing later. So a whole host of new and nice output formats. Something new in 2.1 is HTML5, which for charting gives you some nice features for animation and more pristine graphics. So that's a really nice new enhancement in 2.1. InfoAssist is also nice in that it packs a lot of features into a single tool. And the way we do that is we kind of borrowed a trick from Microsoft where they have the ribbon interface. And that's where you've got these different tabs or control elements at the top. And depending on what control element is highlighted, the underlying features beneath that in the ribbon change to reflect that particular set of options. Okay, so what's new? What else is new? Our BI portal is new. What do I mean by that? Well, in versions 1.1.1 and 1.1.2, we had something called the BI dashboard as the main user interface. So you would open a web browser, go to a specific URL, enter your IBM I user profile and password, and you would see a nice interface where you could select your reports and run them. We have a similar approach in 2.1, but we call it our BI portal. So we have a similar resource tree, we call it, where you have top-level folders and you create your content, your reports and graphs underneath those top-level folders, just as you did before. But we've added some nice new folders, special ones. So you can see one called Favorites. So if you have a list of favorite reports you like to run, you can drag them into that folder. There's also a special one called Mobile Favorites, which Jackie will show you later, and that allows you to run mobile content from a mobile device. Oops, I lost my, there we go. Recent items and one for accessing the metadata. Now, a really nice new feature in the BI portal is the ability for end users to create custom tabs or pages. And what this essentially means is they now have the ability to create their own dashboards based on existing reports and graphs. So what do I mean by that? Well, here's an example screenshot. As you can see, I've gone off the main page and I've clicked on page 1 tab, and I'm going to create a new custom BI portal just for me. And over on the right, I have a list of all of the DB2 Web Query reports within the top-level folders. So all I have to do is grab one of those reports or graphs and drag them right into the canvas there. And when I do that and let go, now I've got a graph to show up. So here I'm customizing my own page. So I can drag any one of these reports from the list of available reports over on the right, drag them into my portal, and now I'm essentially building my own custom dashboard. So when I'm done, I might have something that looks like this. I've selected a series of charts and reports, and these are the ones that are most relevant to me, most interesting to me. So now the next time I log into DB2 Web Query, instead of going to that main page, it's going to open up this page. So here it's my own custom BI portal. And this is very important to note because prior to this, end users had no ability to do something like this. They had to rely on an existing dashboard and they would have to find it and click on it. Now it's much more streamlined and efficient. When they log in, bam, they see the dashboard that they want to see. And there's also some new mobile enhancements. And Jackie's going to cover this in detail, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but we now have the ability to, using any mobile device that you see listed there, to be able to run DB2 Web Query content from your mobile device. So this is kind of following the BYOD, or bring your own device, where employees are bringing their own mobile devices into work, and they're demanding access to the information that they need. So the problem there is companies, it's hard to expect them to standardize on a single device because there's so many different kind of devices out there that their employees are bringing in. So the whole idea here is to provide a platform where you can develop a single report to a set of standards, develop it one time, and have it be able to run on any one of these devices. And that's exactly what our mobile strategy is for DB2 Web Query. You don't have to write different versions for iPad and Android. You can write a single report, and it'll run on both of those devices. So there's a variety of ways of accessing your mobile content. You can have the mobile content sent to an email and open your email from your mobile device. There's also a mobile favorites app. So you can open the email and launch the mobile faves app directly. There's a URL that you can log into DB2 Web Query with this special mobile favorites URL and do interactive or live reporting to be able to pull dynamic content that way. And then, as I mentioned, there's a mobile faves app that you can download from the iStore. And basically, it runs on iPad and iPhone. And there's a mobile favorite interactive application that allows you to see all of the mobile content in your iPhone or iPad and be able to run those reports. And again, this is something Jackie is going to show you that I think you'll really like. A technology that marries really well with mobile is something called active reports, and it's a special output option that the developer can specify. It basically allows you to generate a PC file with a snapshot of the data. And you can actively work with the data, you can filter it, you can create calculated fields on the fly, you can do visualization, export to other formats like PowerPoint and Word and that kind of thing. Okay, and the last thing I want to cover as far as what's new are the new commands. I've been on the IBM AS400, whatever you want to call it, for 25 years now, and I really like CL commands. I think there's no better way of doing something quickly and efficiently as doing it through a CL command. And what we've done in Web Query is provided a couple of additional CL commands. The first one is to create and refresh Web Query synonyms. So now you can say, okay, I want to create a Web Query synonym over these files or set of tables in a library or a single file, and it will go off and do it through a command line interface. This has been around for a little while. Something that we added recently was the ability to refresh the metadata from this same command. And by refresh the metadata, I mean whenever you add new columns or delete columns from your underlying tables, the metadata layer on the Web Query side is going to get out of sync. It's not going to know about these new columns. So the refresh, what it does is it preserves any customization that you've made to the metadata, and yet it brings in all of this new information, like the new fields or updated fields or that kind of thing. So it's a very nice feature because what you can do is you can put that in a job scheduler, have it run every night, and now you're automatically kept in sync. So if there's any changes made to those underlying fields, the job scheduler entry will run, the refresh feature will kick in, it'll find those new fields, bring them into the metadata, and now you're keeping your metadata in synchronization with the underlying tables. There's a quick snapshot of what that looks like. The key thing here is that new option *refresh. So by doing that, you can refresh synonyms, and again, you can do it in an automated and batch fashion. So another command that was new in 2.1 is called run web query fetch. So this gives you the ability to run a predefined report from a CL command. So very similar to the run query command that we're all used to. And so the way this works is you can, from an interactive session or a job scheduler or a menuing system, in your application, you can invoke Web Query from a green screen interface, and you can send that report via email to a specific user profile, or user email address. You can save that report, maybe it's PDF or Excel output. You can save it to a specific IFS directory and name it whatever you want, or you can FTP it to a desired target. I do want to point out this is with the standard edition only. It's not available in Express. Here's a quick snapshot of what that looks like. I'm going to run a web query fetch. I provide the report, what we call the full path, which is basically a way to distinguish the report. And then I'm going to email it to cobg@us.ibm.com. So I'm going to open up my email address now. I see that I have a new email, and I got an attachment called productcatalog.html. I can simply open that, and it'll launch a web browser and show the report. You could also do inline HTML. I could have put that inline report right in the email body itself. So you have options for both of those. So again, the idea here, a big emphasis in 2.1 was simplification, and that just goes along with the overall IBM I integration theme. We're integrated with work management. We have our own subsystem. We've got several commands that allow us to integrate from a command language perspective into other applications, integrated into DB2 for I, of course. So again, following that whole integration theme. Another thing that's new, in June we had a residency here, a Redbook residency, and we have produced a new Redbook. So this was a long time coming. There's a lot of new things in Web Query that have been added to the product since the previous Redbook was updated. So this was pretty much a total rewrite of the Redbook, but it is available now. I do want to make you aware that it is in draft mode, so it does have, you know, grammatical errors, spelling errors, and that kind of thing. But we wanted to get the draft version out there for you to take a look at, and we do plan on having it go through the thorough editing process, I believe, in January. But you can download the Redbook at the listed URL in the meantime. If you have any feedback on the Redbook, please send me an email, and I'll try to take a look at that and see if we can incorporate it into the Redbook before it goes into its final form. And a couple of important links I want to make you aware of. We do have a DeveloperWorks website for Web Query. The two primary things I want to point out here is we have a forum if you need any help. If you have a question on something on Web Query, you can post to the forum. And we also have a wiki which has all of our technical information, all of the articles and white papers we've written over the years. There is the Web Query homepage, and again, the DB2 Web Query Redbook. And as a convenience feature, we did add a direct link to the forum and the wiki from the sign-on page. So when you open Web Query from a browser, you'll see a login page like this one. You can click on that link, and it'll take you directly to our DeveloperWorks forum and wiki. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. What I want to do quickly here is just show you InfoAssist. Okay, so I've got Web Query started in a browser here. I've logged in as a developer. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to expand my folders under Gene's demo folder and demos. I'm going to create a brand new dashboard. And by dashboard, if you're not familiar with that term, it's kind of like what you see behind me there. It's a collection of graphs or charts and reports shown in a single view so that you can quickly see various pieces of key information in one single interface. And that's what I'm going to create here. So the first thing it's going to ask me for is what file or synonym do you want to query? I'm going to select my Century Orders file. So this is a physical file that I have joined to a stores database, to a inventory, and a plant location database. So there's a three-way join going on there. So I'm going to select that, and then what you see over on the left here is a list of available fields throughout all four of those physical files. So I've defined those joins in the metadata layer. I don't have to do it over and over again. I'm doing it in one place. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new chart in my dashboard. So I'm going to go to my Insert tab. So this is that ribbon-like interface I was telling you about earlier. If I switch from Home to Insert, notice that the ribbon underneath it changes and shows me the relevant options for inserting. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to show you, you have the ability to embed an existing report or graph into the dashboard by clicking existing report. So I'm just going to select product category bar chart, click open, and it's going to bring that existing bar chart right into my dashboard. And I can resize it if I want to and make it bigger. So there is that ability to leverage existing reports and graphs, which is very nice. What I'm going to do next is create a brand new chart by clicking the chart button. And so it's going to bring a brand new empty chart shell into the canvas, into the interactive design view. I'm going to position it. And I think what I want to do here is create a line chart over time. So what I'm going to do is over my list of available fields, I'm going to select my order month and year field. And I'm going to select my revenue. I'm going to hold down the control key so I can select all of them. And then profit. And then in one full swoop, what I can do is just drag those right over on top of that graph, and it automatically populates it with the x-axis and the measures, the y-axis. So remember, I wanted this to really be a line chart and not the default, which is a bar chart. So what I can do is go to the Format tab, and I get a list of different types of functions, and one of them is what kind of chart would I like this to be. So you can see that bar chart is illuminated. That's the default. I can change that to line chart. The last thing I want to do in my dashboard is I want to create a report. So I'm going to go back to my Insert tab, click on Report, and I'm going to drag it over here and maybe resize it. And I want this to have revenue and information about my store. So I'm going to select country, region, and state. And again, I can just drag them right over into that panel, and now I've got country, region, state, and revenue. So as you can see, this is a very intuitive interface. It's very easy to just, grab the fields you want, drag them over, and you can instantly see, without having to run the report or save it, what it's going to look like. Because what the interactive design view is doing is it's going to the database and dynamically getting a number of fields, or I'm sorry, a number of records. And you can see there the default is 500. So in this preview mode, I'm going to the database and I'm pulling in 500 records from the live data, from the live tables. You can change this if you want to. Okay, so I think I'm pretty happy with how that looks. I can save this dashboard, and I'm going to call it my new dashboard, and exit out of InfoAssist. And so now you can see under my demos folder, I have a new a listing there called My Dashboard. I can double-click on that dashboard and have it run. And there you can see, hopefully you saw the animation. I'm not sure if it came through on the GoToMeeting, but hopefully you saw that. So there it is. There's my dashboard. So you can see how easy this tool is to use. You can quickly create reports, you can create graphs, and you can transform things into dashboards with the click of a button. So a very exciting tool to use, very fun. In fact, at Common, we have to kick people out of the sessions. We have these back-to-back labs, and it's intended for new people to come into the second session, and we have to kick out the people in the first session because they don't want to leave. They're having so much fun using this tool. So I think that's a good indication of how easy it is to use.
Any front-end reporting tool, and DB2 Web Query is, obviously a tool of choice for us on DB2 IBM I. But any front-end reporting tool has some issues with using operational data for specifically business intelligence reporting. So that's what we're going to explore: is what are those issues, what are the challenges, and how do we solve them? So, and this is often our first approach or our first step into business intelligence reporting. We've got the tool, we implement it, we point it directly against our operational tables. It works well to start with, but as we get more and more sophisticated in our reporting, then we start to find some different challenges. So let's just look at, first of all, just go back here. Oops. the different stages of business intelligence. So the first stage is just simply reporting what happened in the past. So we're looking at our operational data to say, okay, what is it that happened last month, last week, last year, and and it's fairly straightforward to do. And yep, absolutely, we can probably do that directly from our operational data. We then start getting a little bit more sophisticated. We want to do some analysis, so we want to be able to do some drill down into the data and look at more detail about why things happened rather than just what happened. You can probably do this in a lot of cases from operational data, but as we get more and more sophisticated, it's going to get more and more difficult. And finally, many organizations don't get to this layer of sophistication, but if we start to look at predictive analytics, statistical analysis, it's almost impossible to do that from operational data. You really have to prepare the data specifically for this type of reporting. So as we move from left to right on this chart, we're adding increasing business value so that we're getting more and more usefulness, more and more insight from our business intelligence reporting. But at the same time, the complexity that we need to implement in our reports and analysis is getting exponentially more difficult as we get over to the right-hand side. So as you can guess, the solution is to implement some sort of data warehouse or data mart architecture. Done properly, this will supercharge your reporting. So this chart shows just a very straightforward architecture. The top layer here, we can see the different operational databases, sales, purchasing, financials, different sources of data. We need to pull that data somehow, and we may be on a different LPA or even a different system, do some transformations and do some error management and load it into our data warehouse and data mart tables. And then we're implementing DB2 Web Query directly against those tables. Metadata, Gene talked about metadata in DB2 Web Query. It's absolutely essential for success in a business intelligence project. So metadata encompasses the whole scope of information about what is in our operational data, information about the processes, the transformations, the business rules that have been applied, and what we have stored in our data warehouse tables. So what we're doing here is pushing all the issues and the complexity to the back end. So rather than having to deal with that in our reporting, we're giving the report authors the data that they really need to be able to produce the reports that they're looking for. So let's understand what are the some of these issues that that require us to build the data warehouse for huge success. First of all, it's just the design of the database. It wasn't designed for you to access. So when we're looking at operational systems, especially ERP applications, the database was designed to support the transactions that are being raised in the system. Because of that, there's usually many more tables than you'd like to deal with. The data is stored in formats that is very easy for the application to understand, but often quite difficult for you to understand. And it's very likely, especially if this is a legacy application, and J.D. Edwards' world, one world of good examples of this, if these applications came from the late 90s, they're likely to have 6-character column names. How can you describe in 6 characters what this particular piece of data means? There's also probably no user manual, so it's, as a report author, if I'm looking directly against the operational data, somehow I've got to find out where is the data that I'm looking for, what does it mean, and what are the gotchas that are associated with it. There is a user manual, but it's for the application, not for the database itself. We're also probably, we'll find this is maybe inconsistency in the design. So if the application has grown over time with different developers, or it's maybe a merger of different applications into a grown application, then we might find that the table field or naming is different. We might find different representations of the same piece of data. We might also find that certain redundant fields have been reused for some other purpose. So irrespective of what the field name says or the field text says, it could quite well be something else. Because of the extent the third normal form usage of the database, it's quite likely that we've got a lot of tables to join. So we've got to work out how the joins occur, and in many cases there might be derived values that are used for joins or partial key joins, so the joins aren't always straightforward. And then the data itself, often we've got embedded information. The second character of this column means something, or a conditional rule. If the transaction type is S, then we might have to multiply the value by -1. If you don't know these rules, then your reports are going to be incorrect. Often dates are an issue too. DB2 Web Query has got some great capabilities of dealing with dates in comparison to a lot of other tools, but it can still be a challenge when your dates are still just a number in a database. Could have a date of all zeros or all nines. What does that mean? So here's just an example, and this is only just how many 6 tables in my schema here, just so that you can see it on the chart and read the column names. Typically you're going to have more tables than this in a typical transaction schema. So some of the examples I talked about before, 6-character legacy field names because of RPG3 limitations. We might have the same piece of data in 2 different tables. One of them's reliable, the other one isn't. And there's a lot of data here that you really may never ever use for business intelligence reporting. So you have to search through maybe possibly hundreds and hundreds of fields looking for the ones that are useful to you. If we convert that into a data mart, we might see something like this. So this is a set of tables that has been designed for a specific set of reports. The first thing you'll notice, obviously, is that we've given the columns very, very meaningful names. The database now has the capability of using SQL names up to 128 characters. So let's use as much information as we can, or sensibly can, to describe what is this piece of data. We've already performed some complex calculations so that the end user doesn't need to guess what is the calculation for net price or net sales, etc. And we've also converted columns into true date columns, so it's very easy now to manipulate dates and do date calculations. And we've only included the columns that we care about. So all the columns that will never ever be useful to me, maybe especially if I'm using an ERP application where there are columns there that relate to other industries other than mine, we've just dropped them off entirely. So as you can see, this is much easier to use for reporting. It's going to be a lot easier for me to understand as a report author what information I'm dealing with. I don't need to guess at calculations and business rules. So those are the So this is the nirvana that what we're trying to get to, is a simplified data marts that allow us to easily access the information that we need. So besides the complexity of a single database, what about the complexity of having to deal with multiple different data sources? 15 years ago, as an AS400 shop, you probably only ever dealt with AS400 data, but I would guess that probably not for 99% of the people in the audience today, that's not the case for you today. Yes, I would expect that a lot of your data is DB2 for I, but we're seeing increasingly people using having other databases such as Oracle, SQL Server, or MySQL, and in the last few years we've got data in the cloud, in Salesforce. We might need to be pulling in data in a flat file format or a delimited format that's coming from some outside provider. Or maybe we're using tools like SAP where you can't really even access the database directly. You need to use APIs to go and get the data that you need. So all of these significantly complicate the reporting challenge. How do I produce a dashboard like this when data could be coming from 2, 3, or 4 of these different places? Another issue with operational data is that we are likely to be dealing with, if we're dealing with operational data and we're talking, showing sales transactions for this year, this month, etc., then to produce a dashboard like this, I need to go and summarize and aggregate the month's data or the year's data to come up with these pie charts and graphs. If I'm in a high volume business, that could be hundreds of thousands or even millions and millions of rows of data that need to be aggregated every time I run this report. So performance is going to be an issue. we solve this, of course, by creating some sort of extract table or summary table to report on. And that's a basic function of a data warehouse and data mart, is to create the summaries that are necessary. So whenever I run a report, instead of waiting for 5 minutes for my dashboard to populate, it's there immediately, because I'm just going to look at the 200 or 300 or 2,000 or 3,000 rows that are necessary for my dashboard to display. Probably the biggest issue of all, though, is data quality. And I've put this chart up first because I really want to try to make an impact with this. This is a recent report from a consulting organization that came up with a number of $3 trillion per year as the cost of dirty or poor quality data to US business. And that's double the size of the federal deficit. That's just a mind-boggling number, and I can't get my head around it, but you know, it's probably fairly close to that. A similar report from 2002 put the number at 600 billion. Think of the explosion of data that we've had since 2002. We're dealing with much more data. We've got it from lots of different sources. Some of them are unreliable, and so I'm quite confident that $3 trillion number is fairly, it's fairly ballpark. Similar estimates put the cost to your operating revenue as 15 to 20%. Again, several sources have come up with that number. That to me sounds, incredibly high. Poor data costing you 15 to 20% of potential revenue. And this last quote on the chart here really sort of sums it up. There are so many surveys that have been produced interviewing IT executives. They all agree that data quality is one of their biggest issues and roadblocks, yet most organizations do not have any correct, or at least a good path to managing their data quality in business intelligence reporting. This is just a classic example of the sort of thing that can happen with one bad data value. The picture here is a house in Valparaiso, Indiana. I won't spend a lot of time talking about this, but somehow its property value in the property tax database was changed from $120,000 to $400 million. Nobody knows how it happened. The first thing anybody learned about this is when the homeowner got his $8 million property tax bill. So of course he didn't pay it. They fixed the problem, but in the meantime they'd used the aggregate data from the city to calculate the budgets for the school district and other things. The school district had to return $2.7 million out of the budget, and as a result all extracurricular activities and sports were cancelled for that year. Do you think those kids and parents were happy? And that was just one bad data value that caused that. And that's an extreme case, but there are many instances of similar ones. On our website, thinkrodan.com, we have a very entertaining article that talks about data quality and has all sorts of different examples. This one's included, and in fact there's a video, a YouTube video that describes this particular instance. Every application, every database has data quality issues. Whether you know it or believe it or not, they are there. Sometimes it's not so much the data. The data may be correct. It's your understanding of it. So if you don't use it correctly, then you're still going to get invalid reports. This is where metadata comes in, helping you to understand what is the usage of a particular piece of information. So obviously, bad data, garbage in, garbage out. If we don't fix the data at the source, then we are going to report incorrectly. That could result in things like just missing values, failed joins, incorrect aggregations and groupings. And the big thing to take away from this one is that reporting tools will typically not highlight these issues unless you create your own exception reports. The reporting tool is going to use SQL to do joins, which is what it should do. SQL is not going to report to you when there is a failed join. It may be visible in the data, but it's not going to be but it may not be obvious. And this is not a function of a reporting tool. The front end tool is designed to show you the data and present the data in all those fancy, the pie charts and the graphs, etc. But it's not; those reporting tools are not designed to handle data quality in any meaningful way. And just a couple of other instances here. Different instances of the same table, so I might be merging data from different divisions or different countries, so I might have duplicated customers, or I've got different versions of the same entity. So in US I'm running one application, and in Canada I'm running a different application, so I've got two different sets of similar data. Maybe the same entity is in both sets, but with a different identifier. These are other types of issues that you might need to deal with. Slowly changing dimensions is a concept where your attributes of, say, a customer change over time. So let's say, in my example here, Acme Flooring was a small retailer back in 2008, and then later on they became a large retailer. And the typical way you make that change is you update the customer record to say they're now a large retailer. But the effect of that is that any time you now do aggregate reporting on customers back for this year or last year or previous years, they now get grouped into the current grouping for previous years, which is probably totally incorrect. So these are some of the issues. I don't have any more charts showing any of the different types of issues, just because I've limitations on time here. I'm expecting that some of you or most of you will at least identify with some of the issues that I've been demonstrating here. A data warehouse pretty much can solve all of these. So in the ETL layer and in the design of the tables themselves, we can build in the data quality management, we can build in support for merging duplicate data, we can build in support for handling those slowly changing dimensions over time. So obviously RODIN is the tool that we have to do that. It is a full function ETL tool, so it builds and manages the ETL to bring the data from different data sources into your data warehouse. It also designs and builds the tables. It has a very extensive metadata layer which will allow you to describe the data sources, build the business rules, see all of the the relationships and cross-references, etc. So it's a full development environment for simplifying the implementation of data warehouses and data marts. Just some screenshots. It's very graphical, so creating ETL processes, you can see a very clear visualization of what the process is doing. And the chart, the panel on the right-hand side here, this is just an overview. I can see that I'm joining 5 tables together, and I'm loading out into 3 different target tables in my data warehouse. And the 2 panels behind are showing source joins and also source to target mappings. We have a very powerful rule builder, so you can build data quality rules. So whatever business rule makes sense to try to validate the data that is coming in can be implemented, and any data that fails that rule will be staged, set aside. It won't be loaded, but it won't be ignored. It will be put aside in a staging table, and an error report will tell you what is wrong with it. And we also have, of course, the tools to allow you to fix and reprocess it to get it loaded into the data warehouse. Graphical development for building tables and views also, so very easy to create new tables, create views based on them. And we have integration with DB2 Web Query. RODIN has capabilities of defining table joins, and that can be implemented automatically as a join synonym in DB2 Web Query, again simplifying the DB2 Web Query experience. But any table that you create in RODIN, the synonym is automatically created if you're using it with DB2 Web Query. We have capabilities for adding unlimited descriptive text, which allows you to fully describe the purpose of a column or a table, etc., and that text can also be exported into DB2 Web Query. So just a nice integration between the 2 products, really, because we're both native IBM I tools, we can do that very easily. I'm running a little bit over time, but I do want to just go quickly into a little bit of a RODIN demonstration. So this is the RODIN development client, showing here a very simple ETL job loading data from a customer table and creating a customer table in my data warehouse. So I can drill down into this and I can see how the joins are performed between the three source tables. I can very easily bring in data from another table also. I might want to bring in, let me take this one instead, bring in another table, and then RODIN through a metadata layer knows what the joins are, or the key fields are rather, and allows me to create the joins. One nice thing here is that we enforce referential integrity. So if a join fails, we will tell you that that join failed, and the data will be put aside and reported on, rather than just ignoring it. Source to target mappings. This is again, a visual builder here. So to create the joins, you simply drag and drop. Let me expand that so I can just get a description here. So it's very quick and easy to create the source to target mappings. One of the I guess, resistances to building a data warehouse in the past has been it's challenging, it can be difficult, and this is the key thing, that RODIN simplifies the development and design of the data warehouse, simplifies the development of the ETL processes by giving you these visual interfaces. Save and close that. It's very secure environment. We handled security, so you can define the owners and security on the tables. It's a full development environment with change management. You can promoting to production, etc. So you can perform new development, test it out, make sure it's all working fine before you put it into production. So that was a very, very quick demo. There's a lot more to RODIN, but I don't have time to go into that today. So what I do want to do though is go back to my slideshow. So we've talked about the DB2 Web Query integration. Just a quick overview of the RODIN error management process. So we automatically reject any bad data into an error suspense table. An error report is produced. Also, as part of the ETL process, we have full auditing, so you can see what happened and when. We give you a count of how many rows were processed, how many may have been filtered out, how many were rejected, and all sorts of other statistics on the load process. One thing I didn't mention is we automatically do inserts and updates. So if this is a summary table and we're doing incremental loads day by day, then updates will happen automatically, and or if it's brand new data, it will be an insert into the table. So you don't have to go down a different code path for either for inserts and updates. Over the last decade, we've looked at a lot of different data warehouse implementations, and this figure of 400% ROI has been talked about for a long time. It is not a fairy story. This does happen. We have customers ourselves who have had huge ROI from their data warehouse, and if you do it correctly, you will be successful. There have been some very spectacular returns of over 1,000% ROI. One thing to take away from this is if you do implement it, get ready for a culture change. Instead of we can't get to that report, we can't do that, oh that's going to be difficult, all of a sudden those type of reports are very, very easy and straightforward, and as you start getting more and more comfortable with developing data warehouse and data mart tables, you will find that the demand for them explodes and people will start relying on it very, very heavily. Rather than spending all your time gathering the data and preparing it for the report, it's automatically there. So reporting is automated. Everybody is empowered to do their job much more easily.
My name's Jackie Jansen, and I have the pleasure of giving what I think is, of course I'm slightly biased, the most exciting, interesting, neat part of this whole presentation, because this is one part. This is mobile and gene reference active technologies. And AJ made a comment on his very last slide, and I wrote the words down quickly. He said, culture change. Boy, has mobile and smartphones and tablets ever given all of us a culture change. I have to tell you, well, first of all, I'm going to shoot Gene Cobb because he stole a bunch of my slides, but okay, I'll say different things, and I cut out a few on mobile. Let me tell you a few things before we get into the presentation. First, the AS400 customer set, as we all know, is relatively conservative. That's not meant as an insult or anything else. It's just a fact. If I was to take a survey, which I can't do easily, and ask how many people in the room were still using green screen to do their application development, my guess is that the number would be somewhere between 98 and 100%. So we tend to not jump on the next bandwagon really, really quickly. So I expected that mobile would be something that programmers thought was cool because they have their own phones and all, and wanted to know a little bit about, but not from a business point of view. Have I ever been proved wrong, which is kind of neat. The number of projects, I get programmers and customers coming to me about mobile. They're not saying, gee, I'd like to learn because it's interesting. They're saying, our exams are all getting tablets by the end of this year, and we need to be able to support them. Right? I found 2 weeks ago that said our board members are all getting iPads, and we need to have the dashboards and this information available to them on their iPads. Right? So it's all over the place. I was involved in a really interesting project last month or so with a couple of user groups from Michigan. And what they did was they went out and got a couple customer requirements for Web Query, and the customers provided the data, and all the programmers in the users groups worked on trying to satisfy these customers' requirements and learned the tool. My point is, if you're wondering where I'm going with that, my point is the requirements from the two customers with no prodding, no suggesting, both included mobile. One was hugely mobile, and that was the one I just mentioned where board members were getting iPads, and they needed to be able to do basic dashboards and other types of inquiries. The other one was a transportation company that wanted people on the road to be able to get answers to some of the questions through a smartphone. They also obviously wanted this stuff still to run within Office. So it's just all over the place in our customers. I put this slide up. It's a picture. It's a photograph, and it's the setup we had at a conference that Gene actually attended last year. And what it is mobile dashboard running, being executed and run on 7 totally different devices. We have Apple in the mix, and we have other phones, and we have PCs, and Windows, and Android is in one of those tablets, and etc. So that you wrote it once, and it's everywhere, which is really kind of neat. So Gene had this slide up, which says, I can't ask you the question I was going to. This is our whole strategy for Web Query. It's develop once, run anywhere. That is a really powerful strategy. If you understand, most companies cannot standardize completely on one device. People will always have their personal devices that they use and are going to start actually demanding access to business content. Now, I was going to ask you what BYOD stood for, but Gene told you. And those of you that were paying attention and remember, it stands for Bring Your Own Device. Let me tell you something really funny. About 2 hours ago, unrelated to this, I received an email that was advertising a webinar someone wanted me to attend, not present at, but attend. The title of the webinar was BYOD, Enabling Productivity. They obviously assumed that we all knew what this meant. It's becoming a more common term, and it's a whole concept that Web Query's embraced for quite a while. Being able to develop once your content and then deploy it across all sorts of different devices with all the stuff being handled in the background about which device supports what and how the browsers are different and all that. It's just a huge savings. Now, Jean put this up to talk to it. This is really the agenda pretty well for the rest of the presentation. I want to talk about how to access from Web Query mobile content. Email is the primary way of delivering data to a lot of users. It is simple. We understand attachments. The people receiving it don't have security issues, don't need to have an AS400 sign-on, don't need to be registered in DB2 Web Query. We will have shipped it to them if they're not allowed to see the attachment. They open the attachment and work with it and look at it. Until very recently, or recent years, we would have said that those attachments were always static data. This is an attachment. It doesn't go back to the system. It doesn't change. You're at a point in time. Part of that is still true. It is still a point in time data, but with active technologies that I'm actually going to spend quite a bit of time on, the end user receiving that report can continue to analyze and manipulate the data, whether they're in an office on a PC or whether they're out in the field on a Samsung telephone, if it's a small report. So that's email, and that's what we're going to talk to first. And we'll spend most of our time there because it's email, but because I want to talk about active technology. We'll follow that up a little bit with the sign-on process. So every mobile device browser, we have a special sign-on and special list of reports that are designed for a mobile device. It is your web query sign-on, and as opposed to email, it'll be interactive and live reporting. You'll click, you'll run a report, and you'll see the results. That works from any type of mobile device has a browser. Now, I should be a little careful. Do we support 100% of the browsers out in the marketplace? Probably not. I went on a look because I just got this new phone 2 days ago, downloaded a different browser, and found out there were more browsers in the App Store than I had any idea even existed. So, but are we doing the main ones that come with all the main products? Absolutely. I'll talk a bunch near the end, I'll actually end a little bit in the email section, about this specific native helper app that we got for Apple. It actually supports both of the top two ports, email attachments, viewing them, storing them, organizing them, and it supports being able to interact live with the AS400. And instead of telling you more about that, let me show you. Oh, so the first thing I get to show you is my brand new phone I got 2 days ago, day and a half ago. I don't know how to use it yet, but I did figure out how to take screenshots and get them to the AS400 and how to put my mail on it. That's all I know. I have to tell you, it's a little bit bigger than the normal telephone. It's about 5.5 inches screen. But anyway, let's go through. This is my brand new phone, my screenshot, and I'm going to click on Gmail. And if I click on Gmail, it brings up my in-basket. And so I have an item here, surprise, surprise, where someone, like me, has emailed me something called Top 5 Report. This Top 5 report is an attachment that I can either save or I can view. So if I click View, now believe it or not, that Top 5 support working so beautifully, let me just do this here, working so beautifully in this environment, on my screen, you know, size-wise, was completely cool. If I'd run it on an iPad, it would have taken the top corner, basically. That was the way the report was. But that report, now I didn't run it live, I got it shipped to me via email, right? So I can open this, I can look at it on any device, it's a nice looking report, and if that's the information I'm interested in, I'm in really good shape. Very, very common way of sending information around. If I have, now, working with smartphones, is different than with a tablet. This is a dashboard. Now, it's too big to really show on a phone. I did it on here just to show you, and I have a very large telephone. So on most phones, it's going to be even smaller. When you design, okay, let me back up. So we say design or develop once and run it anywhere. And that is technically true. Practically, if your anywhere is all tablets, then designing for a PC screen or a tablet doesn't make much difference. A tablet might be a little small, but it's usually got a better, higher resolution screen and looks nice, and you can see everything crisp and clear. Not quite as true for a telephone. If you've got a telephone that was an older one, like my BlackBerry with the half screen at the top, that's not going to show a dashboard very well. Yes, I can go into the dashboard and I can swipe it and I can make it bigger and drill in at it a little closer, but I'm really not, it's not a comfortable experience. So although you don't technically have to, if you are designing, like the transportation company I told you about was doing, for smartphones, what you might look at is doing a lot more of prompting, shrinking the data, showing it on multiple screens. So you have a bunch, I saw the term the other day of report lists. You have a bunch of little reports instead of one huge one like we're used to from, say, Query 400. So one of the big things is this capability of what we call device independence or device exploitive. Active technology, second generation is where we're at. What we're saying is our reports, especially when you're in the type of dashboards Gene created for you with InfoAssist and we're using active technologies, the reports are, they know what type of device they're on and they work slightly differently based on the device. So and the browser. So for example, a couple of options on this, you can see this list called full screen, sort of sending and all here, right? Those options change slightly based on browser, because a couple of them, for example, are ActiveX. Well, that's only supported by IE, so you won't see that option in another browser. So some minor differences. If I'm on a PC screen, then they're set up for me to click with a mouse and work in one way. If I'm on a tablet or a phone, they're probably going to be touch sensitive. So, you know, they work with the device. Now, I'm going to go back. I'm going to talk about this active technologies, but I'm going back to email. We started out looking at email on an Android device. Did I tell you that phone was an Android device? It's a Samsung Note 2 if anybody's interested. We looked at it on Android. Now I want to email on Apple. And I could go into my normal email browser, but instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to start using this mobile saves app that Gene and I have been mentioning for Apple. The way that's going to work is if I take a report and I click on it in my email to open it, what I'm going to see on my Apple device, if I hold it down a long time, is a list that says, what do you want to open in? One of my options is mobile saves. So I'm going to say, yes, I want to open this report in mobile saves. Just like opening it in the browser, except it's inside this. It's basically like an area to store it in and organize it. So this is fairly simple. It's actually got an awful lot on it. It's got an embedded picture. If you look at the top, that logo, Century Electronics, that's an embedded picture. There's a radio control button. Which country's data do I want to filter my report on? I could click at US, right? I'm going to go back up to all, so I can do all sorts of filtering. I can work with the report from many different ways. I can use my radio buttons at the side or through active technologies. Let me show you what you do. If you see a report with these little down arrows, if you click a down arrow, you get a menu. This menu is built into the display of the report. It could be an HTML page. It could be a PDF page. This is all built right in. Like any other report, when I run it, when I run the report initially, it has to be connected to the AS400, right, so that I can get the data and create the report. Once I have the report on my screen, whether I'm disconnected and 1,000 miles away or I'm in the office still connected, I'm no longer at this point talking to the AS400. All my work now is being done within this HTML page or PDF page. So as an end user with basically zero training, I'm going to go in and I'm going to say, I would like to change the sequence of this report. And instead of by country, I want it by gross profit in descending sequence. And notice that's what's happened. Now I'd like to see it a little bit better. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to visualize. Now my report's starting to get a little big. I'm not really interested in cost of goods sold, so I'm going to hide it. And I'm just working my way through different options in my report here. Now I'd like to visually compare gross profit to revenue. I'm going to click revenue, and then I'm going to say visualize. And now I've changed the report almost completely from what IT produced in the first place. Instead of having a summary and subtotal by countries and products, I'm looking at how is my gross profit compared to my revenue by basic product model. If you notice in the report, our top revenue product is not our top profit producing product. That may not be something you would have quickly seen without this visualization capability. So a lot of benefits when we start doing some of this visualization. Now, let's make this into a bigger page, bigger screen. So what I'm going to do is if this could be a page instead of a picture and a radio button, like Gene created with 2 graphs and a chart, two graphs, and a report. And any one of them I could have clicked on and said, I want to turn it full screen. Take everything else away. I just want to concentrate on this one report. Blow it up bigger, let me concentrate on it. So I want to continue. I'm an end user now, and I don't want to have to keep any more going back to IT all the time asking them for changes. I may not even be in the office, could be sitting about to go into a customer location, and I need to talk to them, and I need to look at what they've been buying off me, and if there's any issues or there's any sales calls or whatever. So I'm analyzing the data the way I want it for whatever decision I need to make. So I'm going to go into this, and I'm going to say, gee, IT forgot to give me grand totals in the report. So I'm going to calculate, and I'm going to sum revenue. And I now have a grand total that says $382 million was my revenue that I made from all these audio products. Let me show you something that you could probably do a lot today, and it's a lot more complex than Query 400. I want to know for each line of revenue what percent it generated to my total business, my total audio business in this case. So the first item generated 8% of my overall revenue. The next one, 14%, because remember, we're in profit sequence. Think about Query 400. Query 400, I have to go in, I create the first query, I output to a temporary file, I create a second query 400, I read my temporary file, figure out what my totals are and my percentages, and then I create my report. This the end user does. IT doesn't even have to do it if they don't want to. This is the end user at this stage. Now, let's change gears a little bit and say IT gave me this report and I actually want to look at it graphically. So I'm going to take revenue and I'm going to say I want to make a chart based on revenue, and I want to look at my revenue summarized by country. I'm going to take the default bar chart. And what you didn't see there, but you saw a little bit if you looked at Jill's screen really quickly, is this appears really neat and it grows in front of you and does all sorts of cool stuff. It's really quite attractive, the animation that goes through the charts. I have a bar chart. Maybe I want to see it as a pie. I can do that. I'm sitting in Canada. Let's have a look at the Canadian slice of the data. Notice I now have charts and reports at the top. So I haven't touched my main report. I can click and I can go back to that for anything else I want to do. Think of the people using this. I was in a session once, and there was a gentleman from a telephone company. And this gentleman stood up and said he was thinking, they hadn't decided yet, of using active reports and sending out, they email their bills to their customers, and he was going to email out the transactions, that all your phone transactions that went with the bill as an active PDF document. Well, it was so funny. There was another gentleman on the other side of the room stood up and said, do you mean that if you did that and sent me a bill, I could then sort my phone bill by area code, by phone number, by dollars and cents? Turns out the gentleman asking had 3 teenage kids who were having used on phone bills. Anyway, he was tickled at the idea. So people do this and send them out to users who are not logged into the AS400. It could be my supplier, how, what's happening with your deliveries, are they on time, which products, and the supplier then gets the raw data and in nice format and can continue to analyze it. So let me see a couple of last little things here in this one. I want to look at not a graph, but I want to roll up my data, which means I want to look at it in text format, and this time I want to do it by product category. So I have a text version, all summarized totally differently. I was looking at my charts by country. I'm looking at this by product category. I can continue to do all sorts of analysis. I could even change this back to a chart if I really wanted. One last thing I said I would show you in this. Remember at the beginning we had the radio button. It's still there, by the way, out to the side. We had the radio button that let me filter. That was because IT knew I might want to filter. If they hadn't provided it, I could have done the same thing anyway. In this case, I'll show you how you could filter quite easily on something slightly different. So instead of the country filter, let's look at product category. And I'm going to say filter. And the first thing I get prompted for is what condition. Equals is what we're going to look at. I want to filter where product category equals something. But there's a big choice, and there's some really neat ones. Contains works really well if you're filtering on a descriptive type field. Contains wheels or contains whatever. We'll just do equals. If you do equals, then values, when you click it, brings back a list of all the unique or distinct values within the active report. Remember, we're not going back to the database. We're only looking at the active report. I want to see a report that shows me all of the speakers summarized. And there's all, not summarized, detailed. And here's all my speakers. So there's a lot I can do with this. I had a woman, an IT manager, talked to me a while ago in one of the classes. She stood up while I was presenting this, and she told the class that she had taken 20 of her Excel end users and moved them over to active reports. Well, I have to tell you, when she said that, I got a little bit worried because we don't do what Excel does. But she explained it a bit more, and she said, this is so much easier for the users and safer. She said when they sort a column in an active report, they sort the whole report and not just a column. If they lean on the keyboard, they don't change our revenue numbers, which I hadn't thought of before, I got to tell you. So she said for users that really need the Excel capability, they still have Excel. But this first set of 20 didn't need that. They were just using it for presentation and minor manipulation. And she said this was great, way better for them than Excel had been. And I thought that was kind of a neat comment. Now, if you still remember to when we first opened this report from our email, remember it said open it in this mobile saves app. So if I back out of the report, I'm still in my mobile saves app. And what I'm looking at here is a list of all the reports that have been emailed to me previously that I have sent. Now, one of the reasons we had to bring this app out first on Apple is because other normal operating systems have a concept of files and folders that users have access to. Apple doesn't. So this is our helper app for Apple. So on my new Android phone, I can save an attachment to a folder. I can go and keep all my attachments in one folder, and I can manipulate them and view them afterwards. I do that in Apple. So with Apple, we've now got our own native app, and we do more neat things once we write our own code. So we will do it eventually for some of the others. Android probably being next on the list. If I click this little icon at the bottom, I change to the more modern, what do we call it, coverful view. And I can, instead of seeing the report names, I see what the reports look like, or at least the first page of them, and I can click on any one of them, and I get to see the actual report itself that was previously emailed to me. And we'll come back and look at this active dashboard again in a few minutes when I run it live. At the end of the email portion, don't forget that the active reports are emailed. They can be HTML, they can be PDF, they need no attachment to the AS400, and I can do all sorts of things with them. Let me show you, though, if you don't want to do static, how do I run live? And I'm behind schedule, which isn't surprising to anybody who knows me, so I'm going to speed up a little bit. Here's my list of reports on my AS400 that I have access to. I don't want to see all those on my mobile device. And depending on what mobile device I have versus what Jean has, for example, we may want to see different ones because one of us has a tablet and one of us only has a little phone screen. So we want to view remotely could be different. Also in a mobile device, we try and keep the list fairly short so we don't have, you're not scrolling through 600 reports you have access to. So for any given report, I can right-click on it and say, add to this folder I have called Most Favorites. And it's just like a favorites folder. It's what's going to come up in mobile. So if I do that, then I get a special URL that I can sign on to from my mobile device. If it's a telephone that I'm signing on to, the URL, I see a list of all the folders and all the reports that were in the mobile favorites underneath. If I'm signing on to this Apple app, which I could do access it live, I'll get to see all my folders that contain reports, and I'll click on a folder and I'll see all the mobile favorite reports within that folder. Slightly different front end, but same end result, same list of reports I get to work with. Let's sign on quickly. So I'm running this. I happen to be using my iPad because until a day and a half ago it was all I owned. But I could be doing this from an Android device very, very easily or almost any other browser device. So let's click in my name and password. I'm going to sign on, and I want to run a graph that you haven't seen before, and that's my quarterly summary graph. By the way, this icon to the far right means email a link to the graph for someone to rerun it live and then see it. So they'll have to have authority and have to. So if a person gets this link in the mail and they click on it, they first of all see that sign-on screen we just saw. They'll have to sign in, and then it will bring this report up if they have the authority to this report, which is kind of cool. I'm just going to run the report. Oh, before I run it, I wanted to show you what it looks like on my little Android phone and on my iPad, just so you could get an idea that I can do this. Although my demo is on the iPad, I can do this sign-on from anywhere, from any one of my devices. I can sign on with a lot. So I'm now talking live to the AS400. So I'm going to tell the AS400 that I want to run this quarterly revenue summary graph. And I run it. I got to tell you, it takes a little bit longer in real life. Screen images are great for something. The graph has drill down capability, which I could not use with email, right? So email, I'm totally disconnected. Everything is in the one report. Even though Active Reports gives me a lot of capability, I can't go out and new data. With this one, I've said click on the bar for product details. So if I click on 2009 Q2, I get a report that shows me 2009 Q2. And guess what? It's got upside down arrows. You should recognize this. It's an active report. So I could go and, I'm not going to, but continue manipulating and working with this. Color scheme is slightly different because our menu box tries to match this color scheme that we've chosen for the report, which is kind of nice. My list of reports, what do I want to do? Let's just do a quick show of a dashboard, because this time I'm running the dashboard, right? Before it was a static image. This is now live, which is kind of interesting. Talk a little bit about app. I think we've said most of this already. The Mobile Saves app you can download from iTunes. It's Apple only. Neat thing about it is it both allows a storage space for email reports, and it allows me to be able to basically sign on and run interactive live reports as well. So it covers both disconnected and connected, offline, online, whatever terms you want to use. It's the same basic app on the iPad and the iPhone, and with the app you get help text and guides and stuff if you need it. My iPad, here's what the app looks like, a little icon. If I click on that, I will go into the home page. Now the very first item in the home list is our demonstration. So there's a demo there, it links to help text, shows you stuff you can do. Then it lists your AS400s that I can connect to. And I have access to a couple of them. We're going to look at IBI demo today. One of the other choices is this email channel. This email channel is, what am I trying to say? It's what we were looking at before. It's the list of all my email reports, and we've seen that already. So I'm going to go into IBI demo. There's the list of folders. The folder I use is Active Dashboard, and I want to run the report in the folder called Active Dashboard. And I click and I run it. Each one of these pages, each one of these reports, just like in the one you created with Gene, is a separate standalone report I can work on and I can analyze. We can link them all together with common fields so that when I filter on one, all of them get filtered is quite possible. In this case, I can take the pie chart, the first pie chart, and say for some reason I want it as a bar chart. I could start to analyze the report at the bottom. If I wanted on the bottom left, I could set full screen for that, and then that would just put this one report here on the screen. What I want to do is look at this report for a second in the upper right, upper left. Red says those are the two lines that aren't doing very well compared this year over last year, and audio I can drill down on because it's all underlined. So if I just touch anywhere on that line, so if I touch audio, I actually work a separate report. I pass the product type audio to it. It happens to be an active report, and it's one you've already seen. This is what I then took and emailed to somebody earlier on, and we opened at the very beginning. So that's basically the end of what I wanted to show you for the mobile and active reports. There's all sorts that we can do with it. I mean, this is really cool technology. Mobile data access is really hot with our AS400 customers, and I mean for real live use, not just for interest. And Web Query makes it really simple to implement. I'll tell you, our mobile implementation is winning awards in the industry for our methodology, our breadth of coverage of devices, and our simplicity. I got an email from, Information Week the other day that just happened to show this huge confused analysis that had been done of different BI vendors. And we were #1, and that part of that was all this mobile, which we're running with Web Query. We're continuing to enhance it both in the mobile field and outside. Gene talked to you about 2.1 and a whole lot of enhancements there and more coming every few months. We simplified the packaging, which was requested. We try and listen to requests. We might not react tomorrow like some of you would like, but we do pretty quickly. For those of you, I mean, you heard AJ, for those of you who want the performance or integration benefits of a data mart, RODIN is really nice to help you get those. Web Query will very nicely go against mobile operational data, which is what we do most of the time. But if your operational data gets to be too large, too complex, or you just want to simplify the whole writing of the queries and not having to understand structures, RODIN's great for that, and it interfaces really nicely with Web Query.